Chapter 13 of The Bat. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Alan Winterowd. The Bat by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. Chapter 13. The Blackened Bag. As it chanced, she did not turn. The hall door opened, the head behind the settee sank down again. Jack Bailey entered, carrying a couple of logs of firewood. Dale moved toward him as soon as he had shut the door. "Oh, things have gone awfully wrong, haven't they?" she said with a little break in her voice. He put his finger to his lips. "Be careful," he whispered. He glanced about the room cautiously. "I don't even trust the furniture in this house tonight," he said. He took Dale hungrily in his arms and kissed her once, swiftly on the lips. Then they parted. His voice changed to the formal voice of a servant. "Miss Van Gorder wishes the fires kept burning?" he announced, with a whispered "play up" to Dale. She caught his meaning at once. "Put some logs on the fire, please," she said loudly for the benefit of any listening ears. Then in an undertone to Bailey, "Jack, I'm nearly distracted." Bailey threw his wood on the fire, which received it with appreciative crackles and sputterings. Then again for a moment he clasped his sweetheart closely to him. "Dale, pull yourself together," he whispered warningly. "We've got a fight ahead of us." He released her and turned back toward the fire. "These old-fashioned fireplaces eat up a lot of wood," he said in casual tones, pretending to arrange the logs with the poker so the fire would draw more cleanly. But Dale felt that she must settle one point between them before they took up their game of pretense again. "You know why I sent for Richard Fleming, don't you?" she said, her eyes fixed beseechingly on her lover. The rest of the world might interpret her action as it pleased. She couldn't bear to have Jack misunderstand. But there was no danger of that. His faith in her was too complete. "Yes, of course," he said with a look of gratitude. Then his mind reverted to the ever-present problem before them. "But who in God's name killed him?" he muttered, kneeling before the fire. "You don't think it was Billy?" Dale saw Billy's face before her for a moment, calm, impassive. But he was an Oriental, an alien. His face might be just as calm, just as impassive, while his hands were still red with blood. She shuddered at the thought. Bailey considered the manner. "More likely the man Lizzie saw going upstairs," he said finally. "But I've been all over the upper floors." "And nothing?" breathed Dale. "Nothing." Bailey's voice had an accent of dour finality. "Dale, do you think that—" he began. Some instinct warned the girl that they were not to continue their conversation uninterrupted. "Be careful," she breathed, as footsteps sounded in the hall. Bailey nodded and turned back to his pretense of mending the fire. Dale moved away from him slowly. The door opened and Miss Cornelia entered, her black knitting bag in her hand, on her face a demure little smile of triumph. She closed the door carefully behind her and began to speak at once. "Well, Mr. Alopecia, Urticaria, Rubeola, otherwise Bailey," she said in tones of the greatest satisfaction, addressing herself to Bailey's rigid back. Bailey jumped to his feet mechanically at her mention of his name. He and Dale exchanged one swift and hopeless glance of utter defeat. "I wish," proceeded Miss Cornelia, obviously enjoying the situation to the full, "I wish you young people would remember that even if hair and teeth have fallen out at 60, the mind still functions." She pulled out a cabinet photograph from the depths of her knitting bag. "His photograph sitting on your dresser!" she chided Dale. "Burn it and be quick about it." Dale took the photograph but continued to stare at her aunt with incredulous eyes. "Then you knew?" she stammered. Miss Cornelia, the effective little tableau she had planned now accomplished to her most humorous satisfaction, relapsed into a chair. "My dear child," said the indomitable lady, with a sharp glance at Bailey's bewildered face, "I have employed many gardeners in my time, and never before had one who manicured his fingernails, wore silk socks, and regarded baldness as a plant instead of a calamity." An unwilling smile began to break on the faces of both Dale and her lover. The former crossed to the fireplace and threw the damning photograph of Bailey on the flames. She watched it shrivel, curl up, be reduced to ash. She stirred the ashes with a poker till they were well scattered. Bailey, recovering from the shock of finding that Miss Cornelia's sharp eyes had pierced his disguise without his even suspecting it, now threw himself on her mercy. "Then you know why I'm here?" he stammered. "I still have a certain amount of imagination. I may think you are a fool for taking the risk, but I can see what that idiot of a detective might not, that if you had looted the Union Bank, you wouldn't be trying to discover if the money is in this house. You would at least presumably know where it is." The knowledge that he had an ally in this brisk and indomitable spinster lady cheered him greatly, but she did not wait for any comment from him. She turned abruptly to Dale. "Now I want to ask you something," she said more gravely. "Was there a blueprint, and did you get it from Richard Fleming?" It was now Dale's turn to bow her head. "Yes," she confessed. Bailey felt a thrill of horror run through him. She hadn't told him this. "Dale," he said uncomprehendingly, "don't you see where this places you? If you had it, why didn't you give it to Anderson when he asked for it?" "Because," said Miss Cornelia uncompromisingly, "she had enough sense to see that Mr. Anderson considered that piece of paper the final link in the evidence against her." "But she could have no motive," stammered Bailey, distraught, still failing to grasp the significance of Dale's refusal. "Couldn't she?" queried Miss Cornelia pityingly. "The detective thinks she could, to save you." Now the full light of revelation broke upon Bailey. He took a step back. "Good God!" he said. Miss Cornelia would have liked to comment tartly upon the singular lack of intelligence displayed by even the nicest young men in trying circumstances, but there was no time. They might be interrupted at any moment, and before they were, there were things she must find out. "Where is that paper now?" she asked Dale sharply. "Why, the Doctor is getting it for me." Dale seemed puzzled by the intensity of her aunt's manner. "What?" almost shouted Miss Cornelia. Dale explained. "It was on the tray Billy took out," she said, still wondering why so simple an answer should disturb Miss Cornelia so greatly. "Then I'm afraid everything's over," Miss Cornelia said despairingly, and made her first gesture of defeat. She turned away. Dale followed her, still unable to fathom her course of reasoning. "I didn't know what else to do," she said rather plaintively, wondering if again, as with Fleming, she had misplaced her confidence at a moment critical for them all. But Miss Cornelia seemed to have no great patience with her dejection. "One of two things will happen now," she said, with acrid logic. "Either the Doctor's an honest man, in which case, as coroner, he will hand that paper to the detective." Dale gasped. "Or he is not an honest man," went on Miss Cornelia, "and he will keep it for himself. I don't think he's an honest man." The frank expression of her distrust seemed to calm her a little. She resumed her interrogation of Dale more gently. "Now, let's be clear about this. Had Richard Fleming ascertained that there was a concealed room in this house?" "He was just starting up to it," said Dale in the voice of a ghost, remembering. "Just what did you tell him?" "That I believed there was a hidden room in this house, and that the money from the Union Bank might be in it." Again, for the millionth time, indeed it seemed to her, she reviewed the circumstances of the crime. "Could anyone have overheard?" asked Miss Cornelia. The question had rung in Dale's ears ever since she had come to her senses after the firing of the shot and seen Fleming's body stark on the floor of the alcove. "I don't know," she said. "We were very cautious." "You don't know where this room is?" "No. I never saw the print. Upstairs somewhere, for he—" "Upstairs. Then the thing to do, if we can get that paper from the Doctor, is to locate the room at once." Jack Bailey did not recognize the direction where her thoughts were tending. It seemed terrible to him that anyone should devote a thought to the money while Dale was still in danger. "What does the money matter now?" he broke in somewhat irritably. "We've got to save her!" And his eyes went to Dale. Miss Cornelia gave him an ineffable look of weary patience. "The money matters